This wasn't a stormy argument. No. This was something else entirely, more insidious, quieter, yet just as sharp. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary dinner, a fleeting moment lost in the monotony of everyday life. But inside me, an invisible battle was raging. My emotions thrashed like a caged animal. Words hovered on the tip of my tongue but refused to escape. My eyes fixated on Brandon, the man I had devoted years to, the man I had once touched with passion, looked at with tenderness, woken up beside in the same bed, built my youth and hopes alongside. And now he was nothing but a shadow. "Why don't we touch each other anymore?" I asked, my voice fragile, yet resounding like a storm within me. He looked at me, but he didn't really see me. I searched his eyes for the warmth that used to be there, for the depth that once pulled me in. But there was nothing. A void, a distance, an indifference. Then he shrugged, a small, familiar gesture, so simple yet so fatal. He shrugged. The most painful moment of losing someone doesn't come with shouting, harsh words, or tears. True loss comes like this, quietly, effortlessly, in a shrug that seems insignificant. My years, my passion, my loyalty, my love, all wiped away with a single movement. "Is it really that important?" he murmured, his voice hollow, detached. That was the moment my breath caught. I felt something inside me shatter, something small, invisible, yet something that had shaped my entire life. I could hear the last spark of hope in my heart flicker and die. The man who once shook my world had become nothing more than someone I shared a room with. The man whose arms I had slept in was gone. In his place stood a stranger, an emptiness. And in that moment, in the heart of that silence, I knew I had to leave. Without thinking, without questioning, without wondering if it was rational or irrational, I just had to go. I got into my car. The night was dark. Road signs had lost their meaning. I had nowhere to go, but I had to move. The silence echoing inside me made the destination irrelevant. Perhaps sleeping in a hotel room between unfamiliar sheets would have been a better option. But then I realized I didn't want to be in a room that would only make me feel my loneliness more deeply. The city lights reflected off the glass windows of buildings on either side of the road, forming hazy, shifting shapes before my eyes. How many times had I driven down these streets? How many nights had I wandered here searching for something I couldn't name? I didn't know, but just then, from the shadows of my past, an old sign caught my eye, a bar. I had long forgotten its name, but once it had been magical to me. I'd spent hours here, laughed here, lived old love stories here, and now it reappeared like an old scar on my chest, aching just slightly, just enough to remind me of what had been. I stepped inside. The dim lights and old melodies that had defied time welcomed me. I had once belonged here, but now I was a stranger. The air carried the scent of forgotten love stories, of nights that had long since faded, but had never truly disappeared. And then I saw him, a man at the bar, different from the others. He didn't blend into the crowd. On the contrary, it was as if an invisible space surrounded him, setting him apart from the shifting energy of the room. He was at ease, not with the careless indifference of some, but with the kind of confidence that comes from truly knowing oneself. His hair was slightly tousled, but intentionally so. His sharp features bore the freshness of youth. Yet there was also something in his expression, something composed, almost wise. And then our eyes met. For a fleeting moment, time stopped. Just one look, but a look that changed the rhythm of my heartbeat. At that moment, something stirred inside me, something I had long believed forgotten. My youth, my old self, my dormant desires. A part of me that had wandered like a ghost within me, silent for years, took its first breath again. Then, without even realizing it, I saw the bartender quietly set a drink in front of me. "Who ordered this?" I asked, raising my eyebrows slightly. The bartender gave a knowing smile and nodded in his direction. Him. The mysterious man at the bar had sent me a drink. And in that instant, I felt something shift within me. Was this the end? The real story was just beginning, and that night, at that exact moment, descended into chaos. The man rose from the bar, not in haste, not overthinking, or maybe making sure it didn't seem like he was thinking at all. Every step he took was measured, lacking any exaggerated confidence, yet that was exactly what made him compelling. I noticed his gaze drifting over the room, but he wasn't searching for a target. He was a man who already knew what he was doing, not a hunter, more like someone who was already certain of his victory. I fixed my gaze ahead, yet I could feel every movement he made as he approached me, slowly, deliberately, as if he was scanning the atmosphere, but at the same time directing himself toward me with unwavering intent. He sat beside me, not too close, yet not far enough to be distant. His presence was vast, impossible to ignore. Even in stillness, he demanded attention. My breath became unsteady. I almost laughed at myself. How ridiculous. I had spent years talking to people, hearing their stories, witnessing countless games. But this was different. This wasn't just the fleeting interest of a stranger. There was something far more dangerous here, something calculated, and I knew that he knew it too. "I hope you don't mind me buying you a drink," he said. His voice, it resonated through my body, deep, steady, controlled. He chose his words carefully, yet effortlessly, as if he had always known exactly which tone, which phrase would have the desired effect. I met his eyes for a brief moment. He was testing me. I hesitated for just a second between a smirk and maintaining my composure. Moments like these were all about balance. Lean too far one way and I would lose. Show too much interest, and I would be playing into his hands from the start. Was this a game? "I haven't decided yet," I said softly, lifting my glass slowly. He introduced himself. "By the way, my name is Dustin." "Nicole," I replied, my voice carrying the slight hesitation and contemplation I hadn't managed to suppress. The dim lights of the bar fractured against the rim of my glass, casting small, wavering reflections onto the liquid inside. Tiny ripples moved with the rhythm of the night. I could still feel his gaze lingering on me. Then he tilted his head slightly. A faint smile, not a smirk, not arrogance. More like the expression of someone who already knew his next move. And then he spoke. "Let's play a game." I raised an eyebrow. A game? Interesting. Was that really the fastest way to get to know someone? Do people let their masks slip the most when they're playing? But something about this felt strange. Normally, someone saying this would have a playful gleam in their eyes, but his gaze was locked onto mine. Serious, yet entertaining. Relaxed, yet sharp. "What kind of game?" I asked, keeping my tone indifferent. If he was testing me, then I could test him too. That subtle, calculated, yet irresistible smile returned to his lips. "It's quite simple," he said, his voice dropping lower, like a whispered secret, as if this conversation wasn't happening here, in the bar, in the middle of the crowd, but in another world entirely. "If I can't make you relax in 5 minutes, I'll buy your drink." The words lingered in the air for a moment, giving me time. Time to let them sink in, to grasp their meaning. But he didn't stop there. His eyes locked onto mine as if he already knew what he would find in them. "But if you do get affected," he added, pausing briefly, weighing his words carefully, "you have to tell me a secret." I took a deep breath. A wave of warmth rushed to my face. Was it the drink, or was it something else? A brief silence settled between us. He was waiting for my decision. I considered the rules. It was just a game, wasn't it? What was the worst that could happen? To get lost in the depth of his voice, to be wrapped in the imprint of a touch he hadn't even left yet. I had forgotten what that felt like, and yet he was a stranger, a man whose name I had only just learned. But I had always been drawn to dangerous things. I have nothing to lose, I thought to myself. My gaze dropped to my reflection in the glass. I was still here. Finally, I lifted my head slightly and turned to him, placing my glass down on the table. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played at my lips. "All right," I said. "Let's begin then." Dustin leaned in slowly. There was no rush in his movements, but there was a deliberate slowness to them, like a predator approaching its prey without alarming it, carefully, but with unwavering confidence. He knew that rushing would strip away the power of the moment. He understood the weight of anticipation, the way tension could transform an ordinary second into something intoxicating. I held my breath without realizing it. I sensed that he noticed the exact moment I placed my glass down. His eyes were fixed on my face, yet I knew he wasn't just watching my eyes. He was aware of every minute shift in my posture, every subtle motion. And then something unexpected happened. "Close your eyes," he said. His voice fell into my ears like a shadow, low, deep, almost a whisper, but carrying an undeniable weight. He was asking me to close my eyes. I hesitated for a moment. Closing my eyes meant trusting him completely. It meant opening myself up. It meant making myself vulnerable. But strangely, I didn't feel fear. I felt curiosity. It was something I hadn't felt in years. I had grown so accustomed to predicting everything in advance, to deciphering people's intentions before they even spoke, that nothing surprised me anymore. But now, for the first time in a long time, something unfamiliar stirred inside me. A long-forgotten version of myself was awakening, and I closed my eyes. Instantly, the murmur of the bar, the clinking of glasses, the muffled laughter of strangers faded into the background. The sounds drifted away, dissolved into the air. The world shrank. Only he remained, close, dangerous, captivating. "Take a deep breath," he said. His voice hung in the air like the final note of a song stretched to its limit. It was slightly husky, laced with something I hadn't noticed before. But now I caught every inflection, every subtle shift in the way the words left his lips. He was near. I could feel his warmth, but he wasn't touching me, not yet. And for the first time, in what felt like forever, I felt alive. At that moment, I felt a slight tightness in my chest, but it wasn't pain. It was the awakening of my heart, which had been dormant for years. Something was changing inside me, in my cells, in my breath. My heart remembered its existence. It had forgotten me, and I had forgotten it. But now, in that instant, it was beating again. I realized I was breathing, and strangely enough, even this simple act was enough to shake off the lifelessness that had clung to me for years. With my eyes closed, I could feel him moving, but he wasn't touching me. He was just there, existing, and even stranger, that was enough. "You have too many questions in your mind," he whispered. "Let them go." Let go. The words echoed inside me. Let go. It was that simple. Yet at the same time, impossible. The weight I had carried for years, the thoughts, the mistakes, the regrets. Could I truly let them go? I said nothing. I just waited. And even waiting was breathtaking. It felt as if everything had converged in that moment. My past self, my present self, the self I longed for. All of them met at a single point, and in that moment, in that point, I simply existed. Even with my eyes closed, I could feel him moving, drawing closer. But he didn't touch me. Not yet. The distance was still there. Was it him keeping it, or was it me? The questions tangled in my mind, but he sensed them before I could even voice them. "You think too much," he said softly. "Just feel." The words sank into me, word by word, feeling without thinking. How long had it been since I'd done that? In that moment, I decided to surrender to the night ahead. And perhaps that was the greatest freedom of all. "Tell me a secret," he whispered. Even in the dim light of the night, his voice sounded darker. I opened my eyes, but I didn't look at him right away. Instead, I watched the drink in my glass, my hands, my fingers. When is a secret ready to be spoken? When does the weight of it become too much to bear alone, needing to be shared? Under the influence of the night, the alcohol, the air I was breathing, I felt as if I could spill the truths that had been locked within me for so long. But how much should I reveal? When I finally turned my gaze to him, he was waiting, patient, not rushing me, as if he already knew what I was going to say but wanted to hear it from me. "My husband and I have been sleeping in the same bed for years, but we don't touch each other." After speaking the words, I held my breath. They hung in the air, warm yet unsettling, reverberating through the space between us. Dustin tilted his head slightly, his eyes never leaving mine, as if he was weighing the truth with me, feeling its weight. "How does it feel to say it out loud?" he asked. A faint, bittersweet smile formed on my lips. "In a way, it feels real, as if saying it lifted some of the weight I've carried for years, but at the same time, it made it more real." Dustin took a sip from his glass before speaking again, his voice touching on a truth as sharp as it was beautiful. Most of us stay silent. For years. Silence becomes a habit. But once you start speaking, the words begin to spill, like a garment clinging to your body, finally falling away. I looked at him for a moment. How much did Dustin know? "And what about you?" I asked, swirling my glass in my hand. "What's your secret?" The muscles in his cheek tightened slightly. A fleeting smile appeared and then vanished. "When you hear my secrets, you might not find me as calm and confident as you do now," he said, his voice still soft but carrying a depth beneath it. I was intrigued. Why was this man here? Our glasses clinked together lightly, the delicate sound of glass breaking the silence of the night. "Seems like tonight will be full of secrets," he said, bringing his drink to his lips. I had more to tell him, but what? I wondered, would he tell me? Dustin smiled. But it wasn't just an expression on his face, it was a challenge. It resonated not only in the curve of his lips, but also in the depths of his eyes. There was an unspoken story in his gaze, something unsaid, but deeply felt. "Then touch me," he said. His voice was like an invisible fingerprint tracing my skin, subtle, deep, and inevitable. "Touch me." A call so simple, so direct, so bare, and just as dangerous. No one had asked me for something like that in a long time. A call, an invitation, a breach of boundaries. My fingers trembled slightly, as if stirred by an instinct waking inside me. To touch him. A real touch, even if just for a moment. How would that feel? But I didn't do it. I averted my eyes from him, trying to suppress the familiar unease rising in my chest. I looked at the misty glass in my hand, the unfamiliar faces at the nearby tables, the dim lights of the bar. I was trying to escape, but I wasn't going anywhere. "What do you mean?" I asked. My voice betrayed me, too soft, too exposed. Dustin chuckled lightly. "I think you know exactly what I mean," he said. Then he hesitated for a moment, as if carefully weighing his words. His gaze was etched into mine. "But I'll say it anyway. Just feel." His words touched the layers of time. I was caught somewhere between the past and the present. Once I had been a young woman. I had believed in love, I had known that touch was not just physical contact, but a language of its own. To touch was to connect, to acknowledge the presence of a soul beneath the skin. How did Brandon used to touch me? In the early days, when his hands wrapped around me, when his breath traveled over my skin, when he memorized my body. And then, those touches faded. Time took our words first, then our glances. Lastly, it took our hands. We learned to sleep without touching each other. And one day I realized it didn't hurt anymore. That was the worst part. But now, this stranger, he was reminding me of things I thought I had forgotten. Slowly, I lifted my hand. I was hesitant, uncertain, but something inside me whispered that this was a moment not to be lost. My fingers hovered in the air, suspended between choice and surrender. Just before touching him, I felt the warmth of his skin. Dustin remained still, waiting. He wasn't rushing me, he wasn't pushing me, but his presence surrounded me completely. Then, I touched him. I took a deep breath. The moment my skin met his, something like an electric current ran through me. And this wasn't just physical contact. It was something much more. It was a key that unlocked something inside me. My body remembered something it once knew but had forgotten. The warmth of touch, the delicate shiver that comes when one human truly touches another. In that moment, the past and the present collided, and I had to decide which one I would stay in. Dustin tilted his head slightly, his eyes scanning my face as if trying to read something. But he didn't speak. He just waited for a while. Then the corners of his lips curved slightly, and with that low, almost whisper-like voice, he spoke. "Beautiful," he said. "See, it wasn't that hard." But I knew the real challenge was accepting what this touch was doing to me. Dustin gently wrapped his fingers around my wrist. It was a soft touch, gentle, but there was a power beneath it, a weight strong enough to shift my entire world. As his fingers traced my skin, it felt as though he was leaving a mark beneath the surface, unseen, but deeply felt. Something inside me stirred, something long forgotten, something that had been asleep for so long. The warmth spreading from where he touched me coursed through my body, like a spark, but not burning. On the contrary, it was something that made me feel alive, something that had been missing for so long, something that made me feel like myself again. "Come on, let's live a moment," he said with a smile. His words fell from his lips, his voice echoing in the dim lights of the night, not just reaching my ears but sinking into me like a whisper that settled deep inside. When I heard that voice for a brief moment, I wanted to forget everything. Who I was, where I was, what the morning would bring, last night's argument, the silent walls of my home, Brandon's coldness, all of it. My heartbeat quickened. A rhythm inside my chest whispered of the inevitable. Until that moment, my boundaries had seemed clear. I had grown used to living within a frame, but those words, his voice, his gaze, they were all cracking that frame. Should I surrender to the night or should I pull back? There was no pressure in Dustin's eyes, no force, no insistence, no expectation, only a choice. Do choices set us free, or do they only drag us into deeper chaos? Should I do this? Could I? My eyes met his. He was waiting, patiently. I took a deep breath, but my breath trembled. My lips parted for a moment, hesitating before the words could escape. Because I knew, if I said something, those words would take me to a point of no return. Then, almost without realizing it, in a voice so soft yet clear enough to be heard, I whispered, "What do you want me to do?" Dustin's smile deepened. But it wasn't a victorious smile, not the expression of someone who had won a game. It was more the look of someone curious about what would happen next. For him, this wasn't a challenge. It was an opportunity. In that moment, I realized he wasn't trying to lure me into a trap. This wasn't manipulation. It wasn't control, nor a demand. He simply, truly wanted to hear my answer. "Just let yourself go," he said softly. "Don't think. Feel. Whatever you need, whatever you desire, allow it." His words shook me because they stirred something inside me, something that had been locked away and chained for years. Was he trying to understand me? No one had ever done that before. Brandon never would. He was always silent, always distant. He never talked, never asked, never wondered. He stood beside me, but he was never truly there. But this man was different. I closed my eyes for a moment, and only one question echoed inside me. What did I need? And the answer wasn't buried deep. It was right there, clear, undeniable, sharp, to feel myself again. Slowly, I opened my eyes. I looked at him. He was still waiting, patient, calm, not rushing me. I made a choice. I felt clearer, more certain. "All right," I said, my voice steadier than before. "Let's live this night." And in that moment, the night began again, filled with endless possibilities. No more words were needed. As we stepped out of the dim bar lights and into the cool air of the streets, I felt something shift inside me. I knew I was being pulled into the night, surrendering myself to the unknown. The streets were quiet, the flickering glow of street lamps casting long, broken shadows on the pavement. The sound of our footsteps disturbed the silence, but the tension between us was louder than anything in the world. Dustin opened the door to the hotel across the street. The wide glass doors slid back effortlessly with a soft breeze as we stepped inside. The lobby felt like a completely different world from the city streets. A warm, amber glow filled the space, the paintings on the walls telling stories of a past long gone. In the corners of the room, a few strangers sat in velvet chairs, quietly passing time. But I was focused on only one thing, Dustin, and the rest of the night ahead. Dustin exchanged a few brief words with the receptionist. As he handled the check-in, I watched him without looking away. Calm, confident, moving with the certainty of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. He booked the room and took the key. When we stepped into the elevator, a wave of anticipation rolled through me. My senses were so heightened that I could even notice his fingers tightening around the key in his pocket. We didn't meet each other's eyes, but the air around us grew heavier. Time slowed. My heart pounded in a rhythm that shook my ribs. When the elevator doors slid open, we stepped into a long hallway. The carpet muffled the sound of our footsteps. At the door, Dustin slid the key into the lock and turned it. As the door opened, a dim, warm light welcomed us inside. The room was warm. As I stepped inside, a strange mix of unease and excitement filled me. A wide window opened up to the city lights. The curtains slightly parted, letting in the faint glow of the street lamps. The bed, with its crisp white sheets, looked untouched, but ready to crease at the slightest movement. A crystal pitcher of water sat in the corner. Silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of a clock. I took a deep breath. I felt a slight tremor inside me. And then, Dustin closed the door. When I turned, he was already there. First, he touched me with his eyes. My body trembled, but it wasn't from fear. It was the tremor of anticipation, of surrender. Slowly, he moved closer. I could feel his breath. At first, he didn't touch my face. He only leaned in, just a few centimeters. We were so close, yet not fully connected. Then his lips brushed against mine, soft, delicate, yet deep enough to ignite something inside me. The moment I felt that first spark, the whole world went silent. My skin heated, a fire rising from within. He pulled me closer. His fingers slid gently up my back, making his presence known but ever rushing. His touch traced a map, moving as if he wanted to discover me, to understand me. Like a whisper, our lips parted, but our breaths still mingled. His eyes held mine. And then, our boundaries melted. I lost myself in his arms. The room became a space filled only with our breaths and the silent agreement between us. The press of our lips, the way our fingertips left invisible marks on each other, the way our skin merged like light in the dark. We explored each other. Time flowed over us like a river that existed only for us. We dove into each other, belonged to each other. And that night, I found myself. The first light of dawn filtered through the gap in the curtains, slowly dissolving the dim darkness of the room. Golden rays of sunlight tried to erase the night, as if it were nothing more than a fading memory left upon my skin. But that night was not something that could be erased so easily. Sitting at the edge of the bed, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Who was this woman? Her hair was messy, her eyes tired yet carrying a deep glow. For years, whenever I looked in the mirror, all I saw was emptiness. But this morning, something else had taken its place. The traces of the night were still on me, on my neck, my skin, my mind. My fingertips brushed against my neck, and beneath my skin I could still feel a lingering warmth, the imprint of his touch, the echoes of moments my senses refused to forget. One night, one moment, one decision, and I was no longer the woman I had been. The phone beside me lay dark, but the moment I reached for it, the screen lit up unexpectedly. I blinked, feeling a strange tightness in my chest. Brandon. The message was not what I had expected. "Where are you?" That was all. The words were simple, short, cold, but I could feel the weight behind them, as if there was more he wanted to say but couldn't. Was it curiosity, anger, or was he just performing a duty, fulfilling a habit? Did he truly care? For a brief moment, I wanted to take the phone in my hands and reply, but what could I say? "I'm fine, don't worry." It was too insufficient. I spent a night I can't explain. Too direct, too harsh. "We need to talk." But what would we even talk about? The things we had been silent about for years? I let the phone slip from my hands. It hit the floor with a soft thud, but I didn't care. I took a deep breath, running my fingers through my hair. And that was when I realized his warmth was still there on my shoulders. Him, even though he wasn't beside me, I could still feel him. So, what was I going to do now? Would I go back to my old life? That quiet, untouched, colorless existence? Or would I step onto a new path? A response formed inside me. Slowly, I swung my legs over the side of the bed and placed my feet on the cool floor, and I stood up. The phone was still on the ground, unanswered. But it was no longer a part of my story. I didn't reach for it. I didn't read the message. I didn't go back. Instead, I turned toward the window. The sunlight touched my face as if it were embracing me. A new day, a new me. And this time, I was the one who would decide who I truly was.